open this morning with these words from Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh. To look deeply into the suffering of those who have caused us to suffer is a miraculous gift. Thanks to our observation, we now know that the person is suffering. He may think his suffering will be lessened if he can cause us to suffer. Once we are in touch with his suffering, our enmity and bitterness towards him will vanish, and we will long for him to suffer less.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, yeah, it used to be. Welcome to Minnesota Valley Unitarian Universal Fellowship. My name is Holly Bruce. I serve as a member of the Board of Trustees of this growing, journeying community. Nice to see so many of you back after last night. If you missed this, it was wonderful. Linda, wonderful, just wonderful. The rest of our crew this morning includes Richard on tech, of course, lovely Lark on piano, our ministerial intern, Chad, and our worship associate, Maureen, and are sharing words and reflections, and the Team Blue is on hospitality downstairs after the service. We welcome all of you to our service, especially those of you who are searching for a spiritual home. Many of us were once, too, seeking for something larger than ourselves to which we could belong, a sense of rootedness as we create meaning together. We do that well here, though not perfectly. In this congregation, we strive not for perfection, but for authenticity and connection. If you are visiting us for the first time today or are early in your journey with us, we invite you to fill out a visitor form on the welcome table downstairs just as you came in. And take home a green visitor packet with more information about us. Folks joining us on Zoom or YouTube can find a link in the visitor form in the chat or comments section. Whether it's your first time in worship with us or your 100th time, we hope that you'll find here questions that stretch you, people to befriend you, and liberal religious values that challenge you to join us in a loving boldly living justly, and welcoming radically. A few announcements before we continue. Laura?
Hi, everyone. I have just two announcements today. I'm looking to see, Candace isn't here. Right, okay. First announcement is that after the service today is the meeting for our chapter of the UU Christian Fellowship. That'll be in the fireside room about 15 minutes after the service ends. I'll ring a bell downstairs. Go ahead and grab a snack and some coffee and come join us if you want. Today's discussion will prove to be very deep and meaningful. We're going to discuss the doctrine of discovery, manifest destiny, and Christian nationalism today, and what we are called on in our faith, or folks who are leading towards Jesus followers to do to repair that. Repair is our theme this month. So join us for, you don't have to be in the UU Christian Fellowship to join us in that conversation. I'm sure many of you might be interested. So there's that. And then the other thing, after the service today, downstairs at the sign-up table, now that that lovely, beautiful Our Creative Community event is out of my way. I loved it. It was fantastic. Guess what the next best thing is? Anybody know? Holiday Bazaar, which I didn't want to jump into until just now. Holiday Bazaar is like a month away. It's December 15th. It's a little bit different this year. We're adding a book fair to it. Last year, we had it after the service, but it was like an hour and a half after the service, and some of you didn't come back. So this year, it's opening just for you right after the service, so you can all come and enjoy the Holiday Bazaar. Downstairs, we're renting tables for vendors to sell their goods, crafts. Some people are authors. If you know somebody that's interested in that and you're interested in it, it's only $35 a table. Look in the Unison, and there's a link for them to register for that. We need all y'all to donate baked goods, candies, banana bread. Did we have a cheesecake last year? And like amazing, amazing things. Was that you, Matthew? Yes. Yeah. And also crafts, some of the crafts that you see out there now, you know, if you've got something you want to donate that you're a crafter, whether that's a fabric good or painting, or I know jewelry makers donated things. You can donate things. 100% of the sales for the donations will go to the church if you want to self-profit downstairs. And then again, we're adding a book fair from the UUA bookstore, so there'll be some UU books and some other books as well available. So please sign up for donating things or registering for a table if you're interested in that. And then, of course, we need volunteers to help us bag up all of the delicious cookies, and mark your calendars for December 15th. Thank you so much.
Please join me in the words for the Lighting the Chalice, which are adapted from the poet Snyder Maureen Murphy. Have patience with everything unsolved in your heart. Try to love the questions themselves, like books in a foreign language. Answers cannot now be given. We have not lived them. Live the question. Perhaps we'll find ourselves experiencing the answer some distant day.
And now please join us for our opening hymn, number 6 in the gray hymnal. The words will also be displayed up here, just as long as I have breath. The great Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, said, the more we can be in relationship with those who might seem strange to us, the more we can feel like we're neighbors and all members of the human family. In that spirit, each week we take time in our service to be a little less, well, I don't know, less strange. I'm getting to know some of you. Less stranger to each other, to know each other better, to know the joys and the sorrows, the moments in our lives that connect us, that are pieces of the stories that all intermix as we come together in this space and out in the world. If you have a joy or a sorrow you would like to share here today, the ushers will bring you the microphone here in the sanctuary. Please say your name and briefly share your joy or sorrow. If you are online, on Zoom, you can type it into chat and we will share it here. In YouTube, you can't really get to us, but you can share it in the comments section there as well. Are there joys or sorrows to share here this morning? Greg.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, I got some really good joy to share. I am so grateful beyond words, and Reverend Laura has proved right once again. I'm actually driving a vehicle out there. Wonderful couple by the name of Adam and Stacy came to my apartment parking lot yesterday, and we negotiated. Payment plans and things like that. So they allow me to use the vehicle and make payments. And I'm also extremely grateful beyond words about the entire community, this wonderful community here who contributed to that GoFundMe account, and the Ryder community that I know many people that come to Walgreens contributed to that account. I do have one sorrow, though. Eating lunch at work about 5 days ago, and one of my back tooth chipped.
Yeah.
One grateful thing in the midst of that experience, though, I'm not in any pain whatsoever, which is amazing. But this is this is a part that pains me most. The cost of health care in this country. I found out through a lot of dentists that they want to charge me $600 for just a teeth cleaning before they even fix the tooth. So I'm looking for someplace a lot cheaper than that. Help me out. I beseech you. U of M?
Yeah.
Okay.
Catch Greg after the service. You all have great ideas.
Exactly.
So I'll tell my experience. So I was in Mankato studying. So my name is Yamini. So I went for cleaning there, and then, so she's a dental hygienist. She was graduating. She said she liked my teeth, and then she wanted me to be her patient for her final exam. She did me a free cleaning, and I was her patient. She got graduated successfully.
Hi, my name is Barb Becker. I opened a text this morning from a dear, dear friend of mine, met way back in the 80s. She was fortunately to be able to be with her mother this morning when she took her last breath. So please keep her in your thoughts, and dear friend.
Good morning, Barb Gilliand. Okay, is that better?
There you
All
go.
right. One other thing about last night is that I saw some former MVUUFers here, and that was lovely. And one of them, I mean, maybe there are others, but I see Julie Nestor here with Linda. It's great to see you, Julie. You're still living in Ely, right? Yeah. It's good to see old friends and a lot of new people today, too. Welcome.
I just wanted to say, back to the dental aspect, Prince of Peace in Burnsville, they also run a dentist ministry out of their mission outpost. I mean, they have like a nominal cleaning fee, like $30 or something, but then everything's at cost. So if that could help anybody, that's another resource.
I'll keep this short and sweet and say it feels extra good to volunteer these days. So for anybody who's not already committed to volunteering somewhere, pick something, pick anything. It feels, if you feel hopeless, which I don't, but if you feel hopeless, it will help you feel less hopeless and more hopeful. Gracie and I have been volunteering Friday mornings at Open Arms, but it doesn't really matter where it is. It's just getting that initiative going and starting somewhere and remembering that you're connected and building community. So there's my plug for volunteerism.
Hi, I'm Kate Kirsch. I have been a member here in the past and I'm returning again, so it's great to be back. I just wanted to say I was so encouraged last week after Laura's talk and carried that with me through the week and feel so thankful that on Wednesday night, as I was driving home in the rain and rush hour traffic, stopped at a stoplight and my dashboard just flashed 3 times and my car turned off right before I was about to get on the highway. And I just keep thinking how different it could have been. So I just, I guess maybe a plug for listening to that inner voice and when you feel called to go in a certain direction or not, to listen.
Matthew Snyder. Sorry. I guess I don't need to hold the microphone so close. My son is turning 6 on Tuesday. Don't make it a big deal because he doesn't like it a big deal, but if you see him around, you can welcome, wish him a happy birthday. Yesterday, he was with a babysitter for a little bit, a person that was one of his old therapists. And much to our surprise, she brought him a gift for his birthday, and it was a little purple purse, and he loves it, and he has it with him right now.
Tom Ellinger. I just want to raise both what's a joy and a concern. Over the last several weeks in our neighborhood, there's been a lot of construction going on. There's been fiber optic cable being installed. And day before yesterday, we had some people come to remove the leaves in our yard. When I went out to talk to all of the people working there, none of them spoke English. They all spoke Spanish. My world relies upon more than just my niche in this world. And it's a big concern, I know, for a lot of us now. That's it.
Richard, anyone online? Well, this will surprise my wife. I will share something. 35 years ago today, my wife and I went on our first date. We were in kindergarten. There were little juice boxes. It was adorable. Take a breath. It can be a lot. This day to day, this point A to point B, this moment to moment of living. of being. A lot of joy, a lot of sorrow, mixed with a lot of a lot. It is a sacred gift to remember, and it is a sacred call to remember that we are in this lot together. And together, let us hold this space between and among us and sing to, for, and with each other. And we believe in love and in the strength of love, and we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is an Blessed be, my friends.
This morning's story is entitled Come With Me by Holly McGee. All over the world, the news told and retold of anger and hatred, people against people, and the little girl was frightened by everything she heard and saw and felt. She asked her papa if there was something she could do to make the world a better place. Her papa said, "Come with me." Hand in hand, they walked out the door to the subway. Waiting there on the platform, her papa tipped his hat to those he met. So the little girl did too. They rode the train through the tunnels underground. The girl and her papa were brave and kind, and that day they won a tiny battle over fear for themselves and for the people of the world. The news kept telling of anger and hatred, and the little girl asked her mama what she could do to make the world a better place. Her mama said, "Come with me." They went to their grocery to buy some things for dinner. Because one person doesn't represent a family or a race or the people of a land. Her mama cooked, and the little girl set the table piece by piece, as she'd always done. Plate in the middle, knife and fork to the right, napkin by its side, water glass. The little girl sat with her mama and papa, and they ate together. Her dog nuzzled her under the table, and she scratched his head. "I want to do something of my own," she said. "Can I walk the dog?" Her parents looked at each other, and they looked at her child. They let her go, and they sent a message to the world. They would not live in fear. And when the little girl opened the door, the boy across the hall opened his door too. "Where are you going?" he asked. The little girl said, "Come with me, because two people together are stronger than one." The girl, the boy, and the dog were happy to be out. One step at a time, they understood what they could do to make the world a better place. They could go on. Brave, gentle, strong, and kind to one another and all living beings. As tiny as it was, their part mattered to the world. Your part matters too. Come with me.
The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron wrote that generosity is an activity that loosens us up By offering whatever we can, a dollar, a flower, a word of encouragement, we are training and letting go. Each month here at MVUUF, we practice that generosity by sharing half our Sunday collection with a community partner. This month's partner is the Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center, a nonprofit social and mental health services organization committed to traditional ways of being and support of Native women and their families. Founded in 1984, MIWRC provides a broad range of programs designed to educate and empower Native women and their families and to inform and assist those who work providing services to their community. Will the ushers please come forward and take the offering, which will, as always, be accepted with gratitude.
This morning's reading comes from the Gospel of Luke. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. He asked, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" Jesus replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But the expert wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" And in reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place, saw him and passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, put on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you have." Which of these do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise."
The Good Samaritan. You don't have to be Christian to know that story. It's a story we all know from the feel-good stories that come at the end of the news broadcast, that little reward for sitting through all the bad stuff about the world and the Vikings and the weather. 2 Good Samaritans brush snow off of cars for frontline workers. A moral lesson we can all try to learn. Police, Good Samaritans, team up to lift 2-ton car off crushed teen driver and save his life. A model of who we could be. Good Samaritan finds lost purse, delivers it, and has lovely chat with owner through her ring cam. These are great stories. They are stories of bravery or of kindness, of lives saved, heartbreak averted, or at least lessened. Stories of rescued children, of puppies brought home, of people pausing their own lives to change the life of a stranger for the better. Good stories with a direct lesson for anyone, Christian or otherwise. Be a Good Samaritan. Help people out. And if that's all we ever get from this parable, I guess it's okay. But that may not really have been the story Jesus was telling. Not the lesson he was trying to teach, or at least not the only lesson he was trying to teach. I mean, whether or not Jesus was an incarnation of God, he was a pretty good teacher. And his stories could teach layers of lessons if we listen for them. And if we listen to the lesson of the parable of the Good Samaritan, we come to realize it is not a story of what. It is a story of who. See, Jesus didn't answer that lawyer's first question. What should I do? Jesus didn't answer that with a parable. Because the lawyer knew the answer to the question. It's an old lawyer trick. Never ask a question you don't know the answer to. The answer was love God and love your neighbor as yourself. No, the parable came in answer to a different question. Who is my neighbor? Or maybe the parable was an answer to the question behind that question. Who is not my neighbor? Who don't I have to love? Now, we could laugh here, and it's okay, I'm a lawyer, we can take the jokes. We could laugh here about lawyers loving loopholes. I've been one for a quarter century. We love loopholes. But if we're all honest with ourselves, if I'm honest with myself, isn't that a question we'd all like an answer to sometimes? There are book bannings going on all over the country. Migrants are under threat of mass deportation. Laws dehumanizing trans and queer people are introduced in nearly every state and being passed in far too many of them. Police still kill black men. There are drug dealers setting up camp outside the low-income housing where I serve as chaplain, casually, without any consequence, disrupting the lives of the people in that building. A majority of U.S. voters chose as president a man who is comfortable, happy, spewing hate and ideas about women, immigrants, queer and trans folk, people with disabilities, or anyone else that doesn't fit a preconceived notion of normal and right, which just happens to be basically looking like him. So yeah, please tell me, who isn't my neighbor? I'm going to level with you here. This sermon would have been a lot easier to deliver, might have been a lot easier to take in 2 weeks ago, if the election had gone a different way. I wrote the first version of it this summer when I was still reasonably hopeful. I was still hopeful last month when we decided to put this on the calendar for this month's service, for this service, on the worship theme of repair. This lesson that this Palestinian Jew living in Roman-occupied territory offered with his parable, well, it seemed a lot easier to learn, a lot easier to live back in those halcyon days. But Jesus didn't give an easy answer for easy times. He didn't give the expected answer. To understand how unexpected his answer was, we need to understand who the Samaritans were to Jesus' audience. So this is where, because I'm in seminary, you get a little history of the Bible. It'll be brief. But as one biblical scholar has put it, the Samaritans were not merely outcasts to those first century Jews that Jesus was one of and lived among. They were enemies. Enemies to a great extent because even though they all worshiped Yahweh and held to the Israelite covenant with God, held that that covenant with God and with each other was sacred, they were also each side convinced in the core of their very being that the other one expressed their worship in the wrong way. Those differences were sincere, they were deeply felt, and they were sometimes violent. As John's gospel phrased it, Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans. That sounds familiar. This us versus them thing. We didn't make it up, folks. And Jesus knew that. He had just been reminded of it a day or two before he told this parable of the Good Samaritan, when a Samaritan village had refused Jesus and his disciples hospitality because they were Jews. His disciples asked Jesus, hey, should we call down fire and burn their village to the ground? Now the gospel says Jesus turned and rebuked them. I picture him just doing one of these. And just thinking, this is going to be so much harder than I thought. So a few days later, with his disciples in the audience, he answers that lawyer's question with the story of a Samaritan stopping by the side of the road to help a half-dead robbery victim, treating his wounds, giving him a lift to the nearest inn, and paying the innkeeper 2 days' wages to take care of the man. And so Jesus answers that lawyer's second question with his own question. Who was the neighbor to the man who was attacked? The one who helped him, comes the answer. Not what, but who. Not be the Good Samaritan, but see the Good Samaritan. And not merely see with our eyes. Who knows if this robbery victim could see at all, having been beaten half to death? His eyes could have been swollen shut. No, see with the heart, with the core of who we are as human beings, with our shared being. See this Samaritan, this enemy, this man who holds ideas and values that offend your very own as neighbor, as capable of love, as worthy of love, as fellow human. That moment of seeing is the heart of this parable. Now, every English version of the parable that I've read says that the Samaritan felt pity for the robbery victim. But the original Greek word, I didn't translate it, I'm reading other people. The original Greek word also translates, maybe translates better, as deep compassion.
Yes.
Compassion. To feel with. Now, compassion doesn't run just one way. The Samaritan extends it, and the man accepts it from this enemy. In that acceptance, that sharing of his vulnerability, the robbery victim returns compassion. In a moment, a spark of spiritual alchemy that, beloveds, might be the only thing that can save us. He sees the Samaritan. Jesus, look, he might like us all to do good deeds like the Good Samaritans and all those headlines that I read at the beginning. But with the parable, he wasn't teaching his audience. He wasn't trying to teach his very disciples to be the Samaritan. He was teaching them, trying desperately to teach them, to be the person who could see the Samaritan as neighbor. This was a shocking idea. I mean, did you notice the lawyer, when he asked who was the neighbor, didn't answer with the Samaritan? Now, that's a simpler, shorter answer than the one he gave, the one who helped him. I think maybe in that moment, this Jewish lawyer, who had always grown up hating Samaritans, he just may not have been ready to name the Samaritan as neighbor out loud. It takes time to change our mind. Even more time to change our hearts. It was a jarringly uncomfortable idea then, and I don't think I have to tell you, it still is. To paraphrase Universalist minister Forrest Church, depending on your prejudices, the parable of the Good Samaritan is the parable of the good drag queen or the parable of the good redneck with a gun in the back of his pickup truck. But I think this parable calls us to look deeper into our prejudices than Reverend Church was saying. This is not the parable of the good drag queen or the good redneck with a gun. It is not the story of the Good Samaritan. The phrase Good Samaritan never shows up in the parable itself. We added that. Again, every version of the Bible I look at comes to that passage in Luke with a little subtitle, the parable of the Good Samaritan. We wrote that in. And by labeling it the story of the Good Samaritan, we set boundaries around that story that made it a more palatable parable. We made it the story of that one guy who did that good thing that one time. We made it about what he did, not who he was. And again, being that kind of Good Samaritan is nice. I'm not going to tell you to not be kind to people. That would be a weird ministry.
But there are ministers out there that exist like that.
There are. But we're not going to be that kind of place.
No, not here.
And so we look to the harder question. And that harder question is, will we see the Samaritan, our Samaritans, in their full humanity? Not because the Samaritan happens to be one of the good ones, but because he is another human being. Okay, no, even that's not quite the right question. This is not about a lesson about the Samaritan. It is not a story about one person we can bring ourselves to see as the exception. It is not just a story about my dad who voted for Trump and who I love. No. The real question Jesus asked that lawyer, asked the crowd, asked his disciples, and that I keep asking myself is, will we see all of our Samaritans in all their complex mess of good, bad, confused, fearful, angry, and hopeful? And look, I know the last time I stood up here and preached, I told you I was a humanist, and here I am using another Bible story to make a point. But I'm using this popular Bible story to ask the question, not because I think the Bible gives it any special authority. I chose it because the question it poses is not only a Christian question. It is a human question. It was in Buddhist Thich Nhat Hanh's invitation to understand that to look deeply into the suffering of those who have caused us to suffer is a miraculous gift. It is in the Quran's proclamation that wheresoever you turn, there is the face of God. In the Hindu idea of divine oneness that inspired Gandhi's nonviolent revolution to build a multicultural, multi-faith India. It is, in this space, a deeply universalist question. At least if universalism today is going to mean anything. Whether or not we believe in God, whether or not we believe in Jesus as God's chosen son, I think we know in our heart of hearts that wherever we turn, we look into the face of shared creation, of fellow humanity in all of its messy, irritating, fearful, and wonderful glory. I know it isn't always pretty. Sometimes, frankly, a lot of that humanity is mind-boggling, heart-breakingly infuriating. Sometimes we're that part. Disappointment pierced me through. Still I kept on loving you. It's my favorite line in any UU hymn. Not because it's easy, but because it is so hard.
Sounds like President Kennedy.
Now this summer, we Unitarian Universalists adopted a new expression of our values, one that is centered in a spiritual discipline of love. We're still working out exactly what that means, what it looks like to practice, to live a love that is not, as the great James Baldwin wrote, infantile in the sense of being made happy, but tough and universal in the sense of quest and daring and growth. What does spiritually disciplined love look like when we know so many of our neighbors are under threat, are frightened for their very safety and being? What does it look like to love in a way that sees both the pain, the fear, the suffering that people inflict, and that they suffer? But what that looks like is only part of the question. As we wrestle with that question, we must never stop asking who. Who is in the circle of that love? In whose eyes will we let ourselves see the suffering? Whose is the face of God, of creation, of humanness, of our neighbor? The answers to those questions, they are not always easy. Hell, I'm not sure they're ever easy or comfortable. And I don't have them for you today. Because I'm still looking for them myself. I always will be. At the end of the day, that is why I am a Unitarian Universalist. We should always be looking. We must, in the words of our chalice lighting, live the question. Because that is the only way we can ever hope to live into any answers. Carry that question in our being. Brave, gentle, strong, and kind, says the little girl from our story. To one another and to all living things. Come with me. See the Samaritan. See all the Samaritans. See. Blessings be, and may it be so, because we make it so. And now, for our closing hymn, we will sing a Buddhist prayer. It is number 1031 in the teal hymnal. The words will be up here. And as we sing this, it is common in Buddhist practice to work your way out from yourself and your own well-being to those around you. And so, please, as you sing this song, and think about wholeness for yourself, for those here, and for those out in the world. My favorite definition of love is the sincere desire for the wholeness of the beloved. Let us seek that wholeness together. Now please say the words of the chalice extinguishing with me. They will be on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our Our closing words come from Elie Wiesel. Sanctuary is often something very small. Not a grandiose gesture, but a small gesture toward alleviating human suffering and preventing humiliation. Sanctuary is a human being. Sanctuary is a dream. That is why you are here, and that is why I am here. We are here because of one another. We are, in truth, each other's shelter. Our worship here together comes to a close. The need for shelter is great. Continue to be that shelter to each other and to the world. See and live love.